Ah, there he is. Hello, John.
Hello, Andre. How are you?
I'm fine. It's actually a 12-hour difference, right?
Right, so it's the same day, same day.
Exactly. Same day. It's 7 a.m. here, 7 p.m. there.
Right. Should I go vertical or horizontal? How do you like it?
It could be vertical, just like you were before. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. So, John, thank you very much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you
Sure.
here. Another edition of One Pomodoro with me. So I have the Pomodoro timer here. I want to keep
Excellent.
track of our interview. So can I get started? I have six
Absolutely.
questions for you, and we
Okay,
have 25 minutes, okay?
let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, so it's on. So, John, again, thank you for joining me. Who is John, and how do I pronounce your last name? Is it Koenigs, or
Yeah,
it
that's
sounds
perfect.
German to me?
It is German. I'm
Yeah.
a Korean, but with a German last name. Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
right. I acquired that name. I was internationally adopted to America, and my family is German Irish, and so
Oh, okay.
I legally am John Koenigs now.
Awesome. So you were born in Korea and you were adopted where exactly?
To Denver, Colorado, in the USA.
Oh, I love Denver. I've actually been to Denver, Fort Collins,
Yeah,
Greeley. Oh, yes, I've been there. That's awesome.
cool.
Great. So, and where are you based now, John?
I
Where
live
are
in
you connecting from?
Seoul, South Korea.
Okay, that's wonderful. Yeah, it's the first time I'm actually talking to someone connecting from that area, from that part of
Yeah.
the world. So that's pretty exciting.
All
And
right.
so, what do you do now exactly? Tell us a little bit
Uh,
about your profession, your job now.
yeah, sure. I own and run a small adult English school in Seoul.
Oh, okay. So, how many students have you got now?
Well, after the virus,
Yeah.
about 25, but we usually maintain around 40 to 45.
Okay. So, how are you guys coping with the whole virus situation? Are you doing like
Um,
online teaching or something like that?
right, a little bit of online teaching and some over the phone teaching. And
Yeah.
then also, we're still meeting in person, but taking precautions,
Sure.
distancing
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
It's nice that we have some space. So we're,
Yeah.
we're still able to teach.
But has it been a very different experience for you? Had you ever taught online before? Because a lot of teachers here in Brazil, they feel like migrating to online classes is a big challenge for them because they haven't got the skills. And how is that experience for you so far?
Right. I didn't want to have the online class compared to my in-person class. I've worked
Yeah,
very hard to create a good experience in person. And so I tried to separate it, and I think I did it well. I shortened the time of the online sessions. I lowered the price.
sure. Yeah,
Uh, and changed the format as well. And at first, the remote classes started as wellness checks where I would just call the student would call me just to see how we were doing because the
that's
situation was
great.
so stressful.
Yeah, I love
So
it. Wellness
yeah,
track.
very
That's
much
wonderful.
focused on communication.
Yes, perfect. Well, so let's get going with the interview because, it's ticking. And I just want to ask you how you became a teacher. So tell us the story. And how long have you been a teacher for?
Kind of fell into it. I don't have any formal training in education. I did take some
Okay.
courses in university, but it was more focused on American education and addressing the needs of the different minority groups. But
Okay.
I traveled to South Korea and I met my wife, who is Korean, and I
Oh,
decided
wow.
to stay. And this was
Yeah.
the job for me. So I'm
So you
grateful.
fell into it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm
Great. I
grateful. I
mean,
found it.
I think a
Go
lot of
ahead.
people here, I think a lot of people in Brazil, they can relate to that. I mean, including myself, because I kind of fell into the profession I was looking for something to do, and my mom said, you have to find a job, right? And
Yeah.
I saw something in a newspaper, an ad looking for teachers, a revolutionary method, whatever. It would take like 2 or 3 days for me to learn the method. And then I went there, got the job, and then I started working on my professional development, right? So I started attending conferences. And so how is that for you? You said that you don't have any formal training, right, in education or anything like that. So how did you prepare
No.
yourself to become a teacher?
It was honestly through experience. I never thought I would be doing this, but after experiencing it, I saw some gaps. I saw
Yeah.
what I perceived. You know, at first I worked at an institute, and I don't know if your viewers are familiar with the language industry, secondary language industry here in South Korea. It's very competitive. It's
Oh,
it's flooded with
sure. Yeah.
small academies, large academies. So there's plenty of job opportunities, and I just thought I could put my own twist on it, and I started my business 6 years ago.
All right. Well, I wish you all the success in the world. Had you had a previous teaching experience back in the U.S., or you started everything in South Korea?
For the most part, I started everything in South Korea. I mentored a couple high school students, but that was about it.
Yeah. And did you know back then, you know, when you were mentoring, that you wanted to follow that path, or not really? Have you ever thought like, okay, I like this. I like tutoring. I like mentoring. So maybe I should do something related to that.
No, but I've always known that my strengths lie with people and interacting with people. And so
Yeah.
this fits very much what my strong suit is.
Perfect. So I have another question for you, John.
Yeah.
What do you wish now you had known at the beginning when you started teaching? Something that you've acquired, you know, with the experience that you have now. So if you could go back in time 6 years ago when you started your school and you could talk to yourself, what would you tell yourself?
I tell myself to be patient, and
Yeah.
so many times, you know, everyone who starts out, they're not good teachers. And first year,
True.
second year, you
Yes.
struggle. And teaching,
Yeah.
you go through highs and lows. It can be very
Yeah.
rewarding, but it also can be very physically draining.
Most
And I was
definitely. Yeah.
patient, and I improved, and now I really enjoy what I do.
And do you work with large groups or normally smaller groups? So,
The largest group I work with is maybe 6. My classes
okay.
at my center are with 4 students, so pretty small. And
Pretty
that's by
small.
design. I keep it small.
That's great. And what kind of students are you dealing with? What are their ages, for example?
And from their 70s to you know, I do teach a couple kids down to elementary school, and
Oh,
everywhere in
that's
between.
great.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Do you prefer a certain age group? Do you think you have it easier for you when you're teaching teens or adults or older adults?
Um, every age group is different. For the
Yeah.
young ones, my primary concern is honestly their safety, and
Sure.
I, you know, I have to. There's a lot of responsibility working with young people,
Yes,
and
most definitely. Yeah.
um, and then in terms of the adults, it's a little bit easier to get feedback, and
Yeah.
I'm working. My student is my customer. I have to serve them, and
Yeah.
so it's a little bit more straightforward working with adults.
Great. Yeah, I feel the same, but I'm actually working much more with kids nowadays, and it's a challenge, especially in regular private schools here in Brazil. I don't know how it works in South Korea, but we have some schools now are actually getting into online bilingual programs, and they're kind of migrating to online lessons now. So it's a huge challenge for us to cater somehow, you know, for their needs, because kids being taught online, that's new everywhere in the world, right? We need their parents to be involved, but with adults, it's much easier. So are you struggling with that too? Are you, maybe a certain age group isn't really adapted to the online teaching models, or have you had any problems with that?
I don't do it with the younger ones. Um,
Yeah,
the only school age student I'm doing an online class with is what I guess would be considered um, late
yeah.
high school, but she's actually in university in Germany. So I don't. Again, I working with kids requires a whole different set of skills. I'm more
Definitely, yeah.
suited to work with adults.
Perfect, yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about you as a student. So were you a good student back in the day, or it depended on the subject probably, right?
Yeah, I wasn't a terrible student. School
Okay.
though, I come from a family of very high achieving academics, and I always knew I wasn't going to follow that route. I tried many different things. I had a lot of
Yeah.
interest as a young person, and that has followed me into my adult life. And so I wasn't really no, I wasn't the greatest student.
Okay, yeah. But you probably had a teacher who inspired you in some way. I mean, probably even more than one. Can you tell us about one teacher in particular who I don't know, maybe helped you become a teacher today? You look to this person when you think about teaching?
Like no, I the inspiration for my teaching now is definitely my wife, but that's a different
Okay,
story. And
yeah.
but I think when I was a young person, I gravitated to I had a PE teacher. Her name was Miss Washington, and she was very loving toward me. So that was I remember her.
Okay, great. So she actually caused an impact on you, right?
Yeah, she was awesome. Yeah.
Perfect. And what do you think, today in terms of your profession? What moves you? What do you want to achieve as a professional? What's your goal? I mean, you're a teacher, you're working with adults mostly, but do you have like a bigger goal that you want to accomplish?
Yeah, this might sound a little bit far-fetched, but I want to improve English teaching in South Korea. I think
Yeah,
there's a lot of room for improvement, and so that's my focus.
that's wonderful. And how are you, going about that now? I mean,
I try to promote the teachers now who are teaching to use more English in class and to not be ashamed of accent or
yeah,
making little mistakes and then also with parents. I work with a lot of parents. They are their child's greatest resource in terms of language learning, and so I
most
work with them to
definitely. Yeah.
help read stories and talk to their children in English.
Wow, that's great. And can you tell us a little bit about the scenario in South Korea? Because, for people watching us from all over the world, especially here in Brazil, it's actually a pretty negative scenario in terms of English language teaching. According to the
Um,
British Council, for example, we have only around 5% of the population that can actually speak some English here in Brazil.
I
And
can't speak to the statistics, but
yeah,
uh, English is important in this country for
yeah,
students because it's a part of the college entrance process, and then
yeah.
for professionals because South Korea is such a small market. Most companies want to do global business, and so at some point, language is a factor in their professional careers, and
Definitely.
it keeps the demand high.
Yeah. And it's pretty common for us to see ads on Facebook or LinkedIn, for example, for professionals of, ELT professionals who are just native speakers. So they don't really have any formal training. And this is something that happens in many parts of the world, but especially in Asia. We see for China,
Yeah.
for South Korea.
Yeah.
Do you have that there? I mean, when people are looking for ELT professionals, do they normally just look for someone who was born in the US or in the UK with no formal training and that's it? Or are the requirements a little, more complicated than that?
It depends on the institution, and yes, there are expatriates who come to South Korea and travel Asia and teach in South Korea. And then there
Yeah,
are some professional teachers as well who have their further degrees and take it quite seriously, and everywhere in between. So
yeah,
uh, it goes through some swings. Right now, South Korea is not
yeah,
a very popular place for expats to come. I think a lot of focus
sure.
is on Vietnam, uh,
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
and other parts of Southeast Asia.
sure. Yeah. And I assume that kids, they get English classes at school, elementary school and high school, probably they have some sort of English course. Uh, is it, can you tell us anything about that? Do you have any experience? Like here in Brazil, if you go to a public school, you are probably going to get 1 hour of English a week. If you're lucky, you're going to get 2 hours a week. And teachers are not really prepared. They haven't really gone through the training, and their linguistic level is pretty low many times. So that means that students are not going to be fluent in English after even a couple of years studying, because they're going to be studying basically the same structures, very basic structures for many years. So what about South Korea? I assume that students who go through regular education, they become fluent in English, right? I mean, they can use English in their daily lives.
It's the elementary English is focused on creating a base, so it's not really focused on building fluency. And then once you get to middle school, it's all about test prep. Um,
Okay.
Korean Korea has pretty rigorous standards for English grammar and vocabulary on their college entrance exam. And so
Oh,
all the
okay.
high school kids and late middle school kids start preparing and studying that Korean grammar English class. So
What about,
there's no actual English spoken in those classes.
oh, really? So it's all about studying the grammar and
Right.
vocabulary, and yeah. So there's no oral test, on the entry exam for universities. Not really.
No.
Okay. So that's why a lot of students will probably look for a private English institute somewhere, just like your school, right?
Right. And then it's again after after their school life is over, then
Yeah,
they need to get a job, and language
yeah,
skills help.
yeah. They actually have to speak the language if they want to get a job, right? A good one. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have one last question. We still have like 5 minutes, so take your time. So what do you recommend in terms of resources? I mean, for teachers who are starting today, for example, what should they do? What's the path? Where, can they find tools, or who should they talk to? What is your recommendation for those teachers?
I think adding a personal element to your lesson, it creates identity. And for me, storytelling is a big part of my
Oh yeah,
language development theory. And so I really focused on that. I remember my mom reading to me when I was young. So, we read, and I think you as a language teacher
yeah,
have your can create your own method.
most definitely,
So
yeah.
my tip, add a little
Great.
personal element to it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, leave your mark, right? Leave your
Right.
mark. And do you go to a specific website, or do you attend conferences or read books or anything you can recommend in terms of, like teaching methods, or I don't know, could be grammar, could be vocabulary, anything?
Yeah, I'm constantly reading. If there's something in my newsfeed about language education, I tend to read it. And in terms of resources, there's so much
Yeah.
content available, and
Yeah.
I really try to make it, number one, culturally relevant, and number two, comprehensible in terms of the narrative, the story, like I was telling you. And if I can focus on
Definitely.
those things, and then character development as well, I really focus on that. So if I
Yeah.
can hit those points, then I can use it to teach.
That's wonderful. And I'm actually very glad you mentioned storytelling, because I feel like a lot of people are somehow, they're actually not trying to engage with that kind of method, because they feel like they cannot tell stories well. They're not very good storytellers. Do you have any
Yeah.
tip for people wanting to give it a try? Because it's not easy for some people. It's kind of, they have to step out of their comfort zone and try to build the characters and acquire certain skills to do that. So how did it happen for you? I mean, you have your experience with your mom reading stories, but do you have any tips for those trying to do it?
I think if you're a naturally quiet teacher, I don't think you should
Yeah.
force yourself into an uncomfortable situation. But if you can put some life, breathe some soul into your lesson, and really give it your own personal mark, emotion, it helps you to be invested in the class and to really strive to connect with students.
Oh, time's up, but I think yeah, so, okay, but I liked that you mentioned bring some soul and make it fun live lesson, right? I feel like that
Yeah,
makes a
emotion.
whole
Yeah.
emotion. Yeah, that's how the brain learns. I study neuroscience, and a neuroscientist said something that I agree with. He said that the brain needs emotion to learn, and that's true. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of times we're trying to separate cognition and emotion, but we cannot really. One depends on the other. So,
Yeah.
John, thank
Yes.
you very much. It was
Thank you,
we're done.
Andre. Thank you.
It was really quick, right?
Yeah.
But we covered all the 6 questions, and I'm sure this is going to help a lot of teachers reflect on their context and their careers, and especially now that we have a little extra time, maybe because of the coronavirus crisis, and people are going back to their roots and trying to find something else to do, working on their professional development. So hopefully for those of you watching, you learned something useful, and this can make you a better teacher. So John,
Yeah.
thank you again. And we'll keep in touch. And
Yep.
I'd love to visit you someday in South Korea. I've never been there.
Absolutely. If you make it out, you definitely give me a call.
I will, most definitely. So have a good day,
All right.
and we'll keep in touch, okay?
Thank you, Andre.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.